Hello, and thank you for joining the Organic Education Conference as part of the 2021 Virtual Southeast Regional Fruit and Vegetable Conference. I'm Timothy Coulong. I'm a professor of horticulture here at the University of Georgia, and I'll be the moderator for this presentation. Pesticide CEU and CCA credits are available for most of the presentations offered during the Live Southeast Regional Conference. Check the Pesticide CEU guide for a list of approved presentations and participating states. The Pesticide CEU guide is located in the Event Resources tab under the Media player. The guide is also available at the Resources Center located on the main menu of the conference platform. Please note, pesticide credits will only be available for registered attendees and only during the live conference. Credits will not be available for later on-demand viewing. There is a simple three-step process to receive pesticide CEU and CCA credits. First, go to the audience chat box located on the left side of your screen and type your first name, last name, and the states for which you are requesting credits. Again, go to the audience chat box located on the left side of your screen and type your first name, last name, and the states for which you are requesting credits. It looks like a few people have already done that. You need to do this for every presentation to request CEU credits. The second step is to sign out at the end of every presentation. To sign out, go to the chat box again, type your first name, last name, and the states for which you're requesting credits. You'll be reminded to sign out at the end of the talk. The third step is to complete the Pesticide CEU registration. You only have to do this one time during the conference. It's not required with every presentation. To access the Pesticide CEU registration web link, open the Pesticide CEU guide on the Event Resources tab located under the Media player. The Pesticide CEU registration web link is located on the front cover of the guide. This presentation is not pre-recorded. This is one of the few live presentations that we'll have today. And so with that, we'll also be answering the questions live at the end of the presentation. Just type your questions in the box and then press send. Don't forget to thank our 2021 conference sponsors and exhibitors by visiting the virtual trade show and featured products pavilion. And lastly, if time allows, don't forget to join us each morning for coffee chats and each evening for networking. Check the conference agenda for details. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Zhao, Professor of Horticulture at the University of Florida, who will be presenting soil and nutrient management for high tunnel organic vegetable production, case studies in Florida. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Zhao and welcome her for her talk.
Thank you very much, Dr. Coulong, for introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, I'm sorry, can you see my video?
I can see you fine now.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not able to see myself here, but if you guys can see me, that's fine.
I can see you.
Okay, great. So good afternoon, everyone. It's really great pleasure to be here today to actually discuss soil and nutrient management for high tunnel organic vegetable production on case studies in Florida. And many of you are probably familiar with high tunnel production systems, as we are noticing the increasing use of high tunnels in vegetable production and local food systems. While high tunnels, also known as hoop houses, are typically unheated, plastic-covered structures that provide an intermediate level of environmental protection and control compared with open field and greenhouse production. As you can see on the slide, the specific size, structure, and operation of high tunnels used by commercial growers can vary greatly. Seeding extension has been the primary function of high tunnel production of high-value specialty crops. In addition, high tunnels may help improve plant health, soil quality, and nutrient water management, as well as the quality of produce at harvest and during post-harvest storage. Research also began to identify the role of high tunnel production in minimizing nitrogen losses and greenhouse gas emission in intensified vegetable cropping systems. We have also noticed that the interest in using high tunnels for organic vegetable production is growing. So organic growers have been using high tunnels as a very effective production tool to actually promote organic production systems. Of course, while we're seeing the multifaceted benefits of using high tunnels, we need to well recognize high tunnel management challenges, especially associated with site-specific conditions, which are really calling for more integrated studies to help optimize high tunnel management systems. So a strong trend of protected culture of vegetable crops was captured by the American Vegetable Growers 2019 State of the Vegetable Industry Survey. As you can see here, the findings indicate 55% of vegetable operations now grow indoors. And no surprise, tomato is the #1 vegetable crop in protected. Other commonly crops include leafy greens, peppers, and cucumbers. So if we looked at the protected cultures used by different growers, we can see that about 69% reported the use of greenhouses, while it was about 53% for high tunnels and about 23% for low tunnels. As shown on this slide, the USDA 2019 organic survey results also indicate that protected production systems are also on the rise for organic vegetable crops, with an increase of 49% from 2016 to 2019 based on sales. So many of you probably are aware of this, that growers may apply to the NRCS EQIP High Tunnel System Initiative Program for financial and technical assistance with high tunnel installation and management. In Florida and Georgia, more than 500 high tunnels were constructed with the EQIP funding during 2016 to 2020. High tunnel adoption by Florida growers for horticultural crop production has been increasing since 2001, with about 186 acres reported for the year of 2013. Now we're hoping to continue to evaluate the trend of high tunnel production in Florida. At the same time, we are aware of the growing interest in organic high tunnel vegetable production in the state. And we have been conducting a series of studies to assess the use of high tunnel for organic tropical Florida. So just some quick updates or highlights from some of our studies on organic high tunnel cropping systems. Here you can see that our research demonstrated the effectiveness of using high tunnels to control early blight in tomatoes and the significant improvement of plant health helped extend the tomato harvest season. While high tunnels helped increase crop yield and quality, we also noticed the trend of higher nematode infestation levels in organically managed high tunnels versus open field. Grafting with resistant rootstocks or other integrated practices will need to be employed to overcome this particular problem, especially in the sandy soils here in Florida. Planting date, we noticed that could
I think we're having a technical issue here. Dr. Zhao, I think, she's frozen on the screen right now. So we are going to try to get Xin to maybe reload herself here on the talk.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, I have no clue what happened. All of a sudden it was interrupted. Let's see. I apologize, everyone. So let's go back to the slide. Okay. So I'm going to continue here.
Yep, we can hear.
Okay. So as you can see here, we have very sandy soil at our research site with also very low organic matter content. The soil texture indicates over 90% of sand. Of course, you will know that this type of soil has poor water and nutrient holding capacities. So now I'm going to actually present two case studies focused on integrated nutrient management to really trying to understand some of the potential roles of using cover crops and different types of composts and organic fertilizers on soil fertility management in organic high tunnel cropping systems. The first case study, we compared the contribution of sun hemp, summer leguminous cover crop to soil nitrogen availability in organically managed high tunnels versus open field. So in this particular study, sun hemp was seeded during the second week of June and terminated in the second week of September. And we also used sorghum Sudan grass as a catch crop and to try to actually evaluate the uptake or the recovery of nitrogen from sun hemp above ground biomass in this particular case study. So the catch crop was seeded about a week after sun hemp residue incorporation, and the final harvest of the biomass was conducted on November 8th. So the catch crop of sorghum Sudan grass was actually grown for about 8 weeks in this particular study. So after the sun hemp termination, we cut the stalks at the plant base near soil surface and removed the sun hemp above ground biomass from half of the plots in both high tunnel and open field systems. All plots were tilled twice before seeding sorghum Sudan grass. And here you can see in each of the replicated plots in high tunnel versus open field systems, we have a plot with above ground sun hemp residues incorporated into the soil, as you can see in the blue box, versus the other plot with the sun hemp above ground biomass removed. This case study allowed us to take a closer look at how sun hemp above ground biomass contributed to soil nitrogen availability and the growth of the subsequent catch crop. The other study I would like to discuss with you is focused on evaluating integrated nutrient management practices such as cover crops, compost, and organic fertilizers in organic high tunnel vegetable production within the context of crop rotation. So the growing cycle starts with planting cover crop of cowpea in this case in summer, and then followed by leafy green production, and then tomato crop during the winter to spring season. This particular study is still ongoing, and we evaluated 3 different types of composts, including yard waste-based compost, cow manure-based compost, and vermicompost. So in this study, we also examined 2 different types of organic fertilizers, one being granular and the other one is a liquid type. So now let's look at some of the results here. In our first case study, looking at the comparison between high tunnel versus open field, particularly examining the contribution of hemp cover crop to soil nitrogen, we actually found that we didn't see significant differences in terms of hemp above ground biomass accumulation or the accumulation of nitrogen, carbon, or carbon to nitrogen ratio, although the hemp residue appeared to have a higher concentration of nitrogen in high tunnel growing systems. If we compare the stems versus leaves, we can see that the hemp stems actually had higher levels of carbon to nitrogen ratio, higher accumulation of biomass, as well as nitrogen accumulation and carbon. Well, for the leaves, hemp crop residue actually showed a higher concentration of nitrogen, which is not surprising, but with lower accumulation of biomass and a lower carbon-nitrogen ratio compared to the stems. So in this particular case study, we actually used a very simple tool, which has been utilized in a lot of cover crop studies called ion exchange membranes. So this particular tool allowed us to actually monitor soil nitrate nitrogen fluxes during the cropping season. So you can see from the figures here, in both high tunnel and open field systems, we're actually seeing a rapid increase of soil nitrate fluxes during the first 2 weeks after hemp incorporation. So this really shows us that hemp is actually releasing nitrogen pretty fast during the first couple of weeks after incorporation of above ground biomass into the soil. And if you actually compare those 2 figures on your screen, you can see that inside the high tunnels, we're also capturing overall a higher level of soil nitrate fluxes, especially with the plots that has hemp residue incorporated versus open field. We also did lab incubation study to look at nitrogen mineralization, especially comparing the plots with hemp residue incorporation and without, and of course looked at both tunnel versus open field. This is also not surprising because we exposed all the samples to the same temperature in the lab. So we're not really seeing differences in terms of nitrogen releases between the 2 production systems. However, if you compare those 2 plots with or without hemp biomass incorporation, you can see that yes, hemp crop residue contributed significantly to soil nitrogen availability, especially during the 8 weeks incubation period. And moreover, you can actually see a rapid increase of nitrogen release during the first 2 to 3 weeks after hemp crop residue incorporation. So this really presents a challenge to us. If you have a subsequent cash crop and you want to take advantage of the nitrogen released from your green manure or cover crop, in this case, hemp, you really have to think about how to actually match the nitrogen supply from the cover crop with the nitrogen demand of your cash crop. So to try to understand that a little bit more, we actually planted our catch crop, in this case, sorghum Sudan grass, and to try to see in terms of nitrogen recovery from the hemp incorporation. So we actually sampled 3 times of the sorghum Sudan grass biomass throughout the season. As I said earlier, it's about 8 weeks during the production season for the catch crop. For the first 2 sampling times at 29 days after seeding and 43 days after seeding, we actually noticed a significant increase of biomass accumulation with sorghum, with sunny hemp residue incorporation versus without. So here we can clearly see that the catch crop, of course, in this case, is sorghum Sudan grass, is actively using the nitrogen released from the previous crop of sun hemp. Of course, in this study, we did not use any type of fertilizers. So it's really making significant impact in terms of nitrogen release from the sun hemp crop residue. Well, here we calculated the nitrogen uptake by the catch crop of nitrogen from the cover crop residue, which is sun hemp, that is incorporated into the soil. So you can see that even though the biomass accumulation of catch crop was significantly higher with sun hemp being incorporated, well, if we compare the high tunnel versus open field, we're also seeing that high tunnel has the advantage in terms of increasing the recovery of nitrogen released from the sun hemp by the catch crop or by the following crop here. Although we're only seeing the trend during the first 2 sampling days, we're still confident that we're definitely seeing this strong trend, indicating that high tunnels would be more effective in terms of increasing nitrogen use efficiency, particularly looking at the nitrogen recovered from the sun hemp crop residue. The last sampling indicates no difference between the tunnel versus open field in terms of nitrogen uptake by the catch crop, primarily probably because of the potential crop aging when we actually conducted the sampling at the end of the 8 weeks period. So now let's look at our second case study where we actually basically examined different types of nutrient management practices, including cover crop, compost, as well as organic fertilizer in high tunnel cropping systems, looking at different crops within the context of crop rotation. So even we use a different cover crop in this case, Cowpea, different from sun hemp in our case study 1, we actually saw a very interesting trend similar to the case study 1 in terms of nitrogen release from the cover crop. So you can see here, very similar to the first case study I just presented, that within the first couple of weeks, we're detecting a very high level of soil nitrate nitrogen fluxes, really indicating a rapid release of nitrogen during the first couple of weeks after incorporation of Cowpea above ground biomass. So again, we have to ask this question: if we want to use this particular portion of nitrogen release from the previous cover crop, especially from leguminous cover crops, and how can we actually schedule our crop rotation? How can we actually identify cash crops that actually be very efficient in terms of using that particular nitrogen released from the previous green manure cover crop? So when we look at different types of composts, we're not really surprised here in terms of the nutrient composition. Many of you probably know that vermicompost tends to have a higher level of nutrients, particularly nitrogen. And if you compare the nutrient levels between yard-waste compost and cow manure compost, you're seeing, the levels being pretty similar here. And they also have pretty similar carbon to nitrogen ratio. And you may wonder why we used a rather low level of, low application rate of vermicompost. The main reason is associated with the cost. So vermicompost is much more expensive compared to the other 2 types. So some interesting findings I'd like to share with you today. So here you can see, if I compare the yard waste compost treatment with the control without any compost application, this is actually during our fall 2019 pack choice season, and we're consistently seeing higher soil moisture levels throughout the production season. So in other words, the yard waste compost was able to help maintain soil moisture level compared to without compost. So this actually also presents us the opportunity in terms of improving water use efficiency and help us to more efficiently manage water in high tunnel production systems. Well, another interesting aspect of this study is actually on the use of organic fertilizers. We included two fertilizer products. One is nature safe, consisting of feather meal, meat and bone meal, and blood meal, and sulfate of potash as the main ingredients. And then the other one is made from hydrolyzed fish protein. So in this particular study, we looked at incubations of soils incorporated with those two types of fertilizers at 3 different temperatures, from 30 degrees to 20 and to 10 degrees Celsius. And we really want to see how nitrogen release is actually influenced by environmental conditions, in this case, of course, temperature. So not surprising here, incubation at 30 degrees really gave us the highest release of nitrogen within the 2 weeks of incubation period here. So we're looking at about 90% release. Actually from the liquid fish fertilizer versus 50%, about 50% release from the granular organic fertilizer after 2 weeks. And then when we actually go to 20 degrees Celsius with the temperature decrease here, and we're actually seeing the drop of nitrogen release here. So the liquid fish fertilizer actually had a release rate about 70% at 14 weeks. And then the granular fertilizer showed about 22% of release at the end of the incubation period. Well, if we go down further to 10%, that's pretty cold temperature here. And we're really seeing a significant reduction in nitrogen release after 2 weeks. And even for the liquid fish fertilizer, we're actually seeing it's actually going down to just about 25% here. And the granular fertilizer actually goes down to around 10%. So this really presents another challenge to us in terms of using organic fertilizers, but we may also actually ask this question: can we actually try to modify the microclimate conditions in high tunnels to actually favor the nitrogen release from organic fertilizers in order to actually promote nitrogen uptake and to actually meet crop demand for nitrogen? So maybe by answering that question, we may be able to identify opportunities in terms of enhancing nitrogen use efficiency of those organic fertilizers in high tunnel production systems. So lastly, I want to present some interesting results here in terms of long-term monitoring of soil health. We actually sent our soil samples at the end of each crop year to a commercial lab, Woods End Laboratories, to actually measure different parameters to tell us the change of soil quality and health over time. So quickly here for soil health score, I just presented 2 crop cycles here. You can see that if we looked at cover crop versus compost versus organic fertilizer, of course, we also include the grafting here because we did it at the end of the tomato production season. So we also included grafted plants in our evaluation. Anyways, so we can see that compost application actually had a greater impact on soil health based on this particular study. And we're actually seeing some similar trend when we look at the overall fertility scores here. So again, the yard waste compost and cow manure-based compost tend to have greater impact compared to the without compost control on soil overall fertility scores. Of course, the higher here means improved soil fertility. And And also interestingly, in this particular case, for 2 crop cycles, we're also seeing a greater impact of the granular organic fertilizer on the soil overall fertility scores compared to the liquid fertilizer. Some of you may wonder, how did your soil organic matter change in this particular study? Of course, we're still actually conducting the study for our final cycle, but the first 2 cycles here, the results I'm showing you, we can see during the first year, cover crop tended to increase the soil organic matter content, but really the greater impact is coming from the use of compost, particularly with the yard waste compost as well as the cow manure-based compost. And we're not really seeing the impact of different type of fertilizers on the soil organic matter content. Skip the slide here, sorry. So lastly, how about EC? Because many of you probably heard that if you are actually doing high tunnel production for longer term, you may actually seeing buildup of salts and overall increase of soil EC, especially over time. So that's why we also try to monitor the EC levels in our high tunnel production system here. So this is actually at the end of the 2-year cycles. So we are actually seeing the increase of soil EC as a result of using cover crop. In this case, of course, is cowpea, as well as the application of the granular fertilizer versus the liquid fertilizer. However, we have not really reached the threshold in terms of seeing any negative impact of higher soil EC level on the crop performance. So overall, we think our soil EC has not increased dramatically during those 2 years. Of course, we're going to continue to monitor soil EC levels. And again, keep in mind, we have very sandy soil here, our research site. Okay, so what are the take-home messages? I have some key points here I'd like to share with you. So as we talked about earlier, that rapid release of nitrogen from Hemp residues during especially the first couple of weeks after soil incorporation really presents the challenge and opportunities actually for nutrient management in organic crop production systems, and particularly here in high tunnel systems. And we are seeing potentially greater recovery of nitrogen from Hemp residues in high tunnel versus open field. So really, we hope that we'll continue to do more studies in this area to really see that how we can actually best integrate cover crops into high tunnel production systems to actually help manage soil fertility and quality. The cover crop selection and management for high tunnel systems really need to be examined more in depth, especially in terms of the short-term nitrogen availability versus long-term soil fertility and quality assessment. Especially we are focusing on nutrient management here for high tunnel crops with the goal of improving nutrient use efficiency and the overall crop productivity. So the long-term impacts of compost application on soil fertility and quality also needs to be well examined. And we definitely identify the challenge here in terms of synchronizing nitrogen supply with crop demand. When you are trying to select different types of organic fertilizers, you may want to look into different sources and also how the microclimate conditions, in this case, I showed you the impact of temperature. So how the environmental factors would actually impact the nitrogen release from your organic fertilizer is, of course, in addition to the overall biological activities of your soil. So in summary, really trying to encourage the use of integrated approaches in managing soil and crop health in high tunnel organic vegetable cropping systems. And we are continuing our research in this area and hoping to share more results with you in the near future. I'd like to thank all the graduate students and other people who have worked with us on those 2 case studies. Of course, we'd like to acknowledge all the funding support from different sources. With that, thank you for your attention. I would like to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Xin. We do have one question already in the box there. And it is, have you been able to supplement CO2 into any high tunnel facilities and assess plant and stem leaf carbon data?
I see. That's a very good question. We have not used any supplemental CO2 in our high tunnel research, no. But could be a very interesting area to explore in the future. I know it has been, I think, commonly used in greenhouse tomato production systems, especially perhaps during the winter production season, when you are actually seeing, a lower photosynthesis in crop. So using supplemental CO2 may help increase crop productivity. But no, we have not looked at that in high tunnel systems. But thank you for that question.
Are there any other questions from the audience? If you have them, please go ahead and type them in the question box and press send. If not, I also want to remind folks that when you leave the session for CCA or CEU credit, to type your name in the audience chat box. There's not any more questions, then, here's a question. What varieties of sun hemp are recommended for high tunnels?
Oh, that's a good question. So far, I am only aware of 2 cultivars of sun hemp. One is Tropic Sun, which has been widely used, and the other one is AU Golden, which is a more recent cultivar of sun hemp. So unfortunately, when growers actually purchase sun hemp from sun hemp seeds from seed companies, in most cases, the cultivar information is not specified. So it's actually a very good question. I wish the seed companies could provide specific information about the cultivars. However, when we actually purchased the seeds from them, we were often told that they were not able to actually identify specific cultivars. So sorry, I'm not able to really answer that question because I don't think that information is really available out there. However, if you're familiar with sun hemp cover crop, I can tell you that the Tropic Sun will tend to accumulate larger amount of biomass compared to AU Golden. So AU Golden, I think, is shorter than Tropic Sun. However, it will flower abundantly and can be a very good cover crop for actually attracting beneficials and pollinators, and really help to improve biodiversity on site. And it probably also flowers earlier. Mm-hmm. Tim, you want to add anything?
No, I think that's great. And also, the same individual had a question about cowpea varieties too.
The cowpea variety that we used in our study is iron clay cowpea, which is a commonly used variety in the Southeast, I believe. So many of our growers actually here, they use that particular cultivar in Florida. So that's why we choose that particular cultivar in our study.
Same here in Georgia.
Yeah. And again, I apologize for the technical difficulty I encountered during my presentation. I was very frustrated. So I apologize for that. But I know next time when I do this again, I'll pre-record my presentation so I don't have to deal with this.
No, that's no problem. So I think, as far as I can tell, that is the last question. Let the audience know the other talks will begin on time and so on. But I think that's all the time we've got. And so I'd like to thank Dr. Zhao again for presenting to us today. And I think we're set.
Yeah, thank you, Tim, and thank you, everyone. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or comments.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Enjoy the conference. Bye-bye.